Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Malynda. Welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk. This week, I have a very special guest that is filling in for my co-host, Karmel. I have my husband, John, with me today.
Hey.
Yay! Thanks for joining me, babe. So this was quite a week in news. We have two very important topics that I want to talk about. Three. I want to get one out of the way. John's favorite topic lately has been Jussie Smollett. He had the audacity to plead not guilty to all 16 counts.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about this for very long. I'm just going to make a point to bring that up and continue to follow that story and see what happens. But
you think he's looking forward to the performance that will be that trial?
I'm looking forward to it. Very much so.
Is he gonna hire makeup?
Oh my gosh, he might. And you even said that those 16 counts from the city were kind of like, I dare you to say not guilty.
Yeah, right.
And he did. So
can't wait.
We're gonna see how that turns out. But there were two very serious issues that happened this week that we need to talk about. The first one I want to talk about is the college scandal. As you guys have seen, I'm going to just read a little bit. So if you don't know what happened, if you were living under a rock somehow and didn't see this scandal, which I say is my favorite since the Fire Festival. Basically 50 A-listers or elite people of privilege, wealthy people were charged with, it was a federal FBI charged them with the college scandal. Basically, they were bribing and paying to get their children into these Ivy League schools and USC.
And then some, yeah.
And I say Ivy League and USC because, I mean, USC is a great school, but it's not Harvard or Yale. But there's so much to unpack with this situation. First of all, in education, it's not really a new thing for people to pay to kind of get ahead. But usually it's masked as a charitable donation, right? And what was so interesting about this particular situation is the lengths that they went to and the amount of money they paid to get their children into these schools. So I think it was a bigger issue, even more so because there were two big celebrity names, Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, who everyone knows as Aunt Becky. They paid sizable amounts of money to get their kids ahead. So Lori Loughlin, I think, is the one that paid the most. She paid $500,000 for both of her daughters to be on the crew team at USC. $500,000. And I mean, I have things that she could invest in if she wanted to give that money up for something. But it's so shocking to me. And then I guess Felicity
Is it
Huffman,
though?
Well, that amount of money is shocking to me. It's not shocking that people would pay, but like $500,000, it's
Isn't this just what everyone kind of thinks is going on, though?
I think so. And I'm glad it's being brought to people's attention. I think we all kind of knew, but not to this extent. I mean, they went to the point like people were photoshopping their children's faces onto different bodies, doing athletic activities. And that's just so extreme when you could just pay for them to actually learn how to do the sport. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, how many different avenues did you have to go down till you arrive at that one?
Right. And
that's resourcefulness.
It is resourceful, but like, how good was your Photoshopper? That's what I want to know. Did anybody see the pictures?
I don't know.
I would love to see those pictures. And then they were paying to get their SAT scores and ACT scores altered. Now, this is what I find so interesting. And for those of you that don't know my relationship with my husband, we are an interracial couple. But my husband is very aware of his own privilege, and we talk about it often. And
what privilege?
Stuff it. But what I find so interesting about this situation really is that, and I hate saying this, but how dumb do your children have to be for you to game a system that they're already benefiting from?
I think it's more along the lines of, I don't know if they're dumb. I mean, they could be like legitimately subpar intelligence.
Right.
But I think it's the drive and the absolute privilege of being, a child to some of those real movers and shakers where it doesn't really make a difference.
Right. Right.
And they know that. I mean, in my mind, those kids aren't dumb.
Right.
They're just being spoon-fed. Yeah, it's It's an interesting one.
It is, and I think that the reason people of color obviously are so upset by this is because we get accused of receiving what is the word I'm looking for? I guess achievements.
Preferential treatment.
Thank you. Preferential treatment.
Affirmative action.
Yeah, because of affirmative action. And when it probably is those same people that are calling out affirmative action that are going behind doors and giving these donations and bribing these people to let their children get to these schools.
Right. They might see it as an unfair leg up, and so they're going to do the same thing. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like I wonder to what extent this is just kind of, if they're like members of some Facebook group, you know?
Right. Oh my gosh.
These are the
There's
tips
a
and
Facebook
tricks, right?
Group for everything.
Right.
So probably.
So and so's kid got into, you know, such school by doing this, or I know a guy or something like that. Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, because it's also like that spot that your kid is taking that's a limited resource.
For sure.
So that's kicking someone else out.
Absolutely.
It could be another cheater, or it could be something else.
Right. But what I want to understand is the mindset that for people of color specifically, and I've heard this a ton growing up, and my mom was an educator and my sister's a teacher as well. But you know, when a person of color achieves something, it is always said that they received it because of affirmative action or because they're a person of color. But on the same token, or on the other hand rather, people will always say that if a person of color complains about not getting something, they say, well, you need to work hard to get it. But then when they do, the only reason they got it was because of the color of their skin. So which one is it? You know, people need to make up their mind. Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's rough. I mean,
it's like we can't win for losing.
you can't, but I think that's also... Yeah, that's absolutely. I'm trying to like decouple that from even the person of color argument, and just in general, like the world isn't fair.
Right.
And with that, and with people who are willing and able to use, you know, their substantial capitals towards essentially keeping their place, you know, in society, because that's what people do, right? Yeah, it's rough.
It is. It is. And I'm excited to see how this turns out, because I don't know if you've seen past stories, but there have been parents and people of color specifically that have been jailed, even for just a few days, for changing their addresses for their children so that they can go to better schools. And I truly do not see how this is any different. I mean, this is 10 times worse, if not more than 10 times worse, because if somebody in the inner city, you know, let's say they work, and this, my mom said this happened at Beverly Hills High School, where she used to teach, you know, a maid of somebody that worked in Beverly Hills would put down that address that they worked at for their child to be able to go to Beverly Hills High School, and they would get in trouble for it if they got caught. But some people have been jailed because of that. So they're just trying to have a better life for their kids. Truly, those people are.
Right.
I mean, these people that are already privileged, it's like, I don't really get what the point is. Like, you can afford tutors. You can afford these, you know, classes for them to be in to get a leg up anyway. So why not just do that rather than paying $500,000 to get them into USC?
Right.
That's what I can't understand. It's USC. USC is a great school, but at $500,000, I think somebody said, I posted this on Facebook, if they're paying $500,000, they better be going to Hogwarts and not USC. And that is so true. So I'm curious to see what the repercussions of this situation are going to be, and if people are going to do jail time, or if they're going to be able to buy their way out of any kind of punishment, just like they bought their way in.
Right. I mean, I think they used means of like they mailed things. Like there are things here that trigger certain felonies that are not easy to slip by. So that'll be interesting. I don't know. And the thing is, with your example about Beverly Hills High, you just want these things to be enforced equally across the board. So if the maid's getting in trouble, then the Lori Laughlins of the world need to get in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
Completely.
Because the thing is, like, it's the difference to me is, honestly, like, some people might do something that's you know, afoul of the law, but to the extent that they're able. If someone is making $25,000 a year and they, try to bribe something with a couple $1,000s, it's the same thing as like a Lori Loughlin spending $500,000. Like, I don't know what that is to her.
Right.
Could be nothing. It could just be like, that's a wise investment.
Right. But it's USC.
It's USC. Well, that's not even the, apparently like in the actual like indictment or whatever it was, they had some other schools that were like lower rungs than USC, because USC is still a great school.
Wasn't there like UC San Diego or something?
Yeah, and then it said like next to it, and they threw shade. They said like mildly selective or something.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. I'm just interested to see where this ends up and what kind of consequences are gonna happen to them.
And it's a failure of parenting.
100%.
You need to find some. I'm saying, like, Malynda and I don't have kids yet, but like that's at some point you have to unlock that ability or that drive in your child, if that's what you want them to do, or you have to be okay with who they are.
Absolutely, that is a very, very good point, because doing what they did, you are enabling, and you are just teaching the wrong lesson. But also, I read that a lot of the students had no idea. But right. I find that hard to believe.
I don't.
Because, really?
Yeah, I don't.
So these kids just aren't doing their own college applications.
That's correct. I think it's probably a challenge to get some of these kids in a room to like read a piece of paper.
You know what? You're right, because going back to my mom teaching at Beverly Hills High School, and she's probably going to be like, why are you telling all these secrets that I told you? But I remember her even telling me that in mailing some of the college applications, because she would have to obviously write recommendations for them, they didn't even know how to put stamps on the letter.
Right. Yeah.
They were just all over the envelope. Right. And she was like, how do you not know how to put a stamp on a letter? So yeah, they just may not know.
But their Instagram stories are on point.
Their Instagram stories are on point. Those pictures are done with a $4,000 camera. It's incredible. But then this is a different tangent, but then that makes me think, like, there's no life skills class in high school.
Right. But
like, basic things. But your parents should teach that for sure. But I think also, just like, instead of teaching Common Core math that nobody understands, teach people basic skills.
But okay, just the counterpoint to that. I don't want to fight you on all these things. I just want to like show the other side.
No,
like,
go for it.
You have to also get someone to care about that.
Sure.
Because like, oh yeah, it's like, where are these skills? Like, well, you learn them, and you didn't learn them because you were texting throughout all of class. Like, it would be the most useful thing in the world to sit a child down and go through, a 1040 easy tax return. Good luck.
Yeah.
Like, they'll have to file that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
when they have the job at Chipotle, they have to file one of those things, and they're going to be like, "Why didn't I learn this?" I can.
True.
But honestly, it's just, I
feel like people our age still don't know how to fill those out.
Right. And like, but it's. I don't know why I'm thinking. Well, we were talking about kids and then having kids. Like, when no one's born with the innate skills of being a parent. And like, some people will try to like read books or something like that. It's like, that's the thing. It's no one knows how to do that stuff. No one knows how to file a tax return, but like, you have to have the chutzpah to just like go pick out a book and learn, like, I don't know. To me, it's whether you learn, anything beyond basic math or basic algebra, or social study or anything like that, like, you can, those things are just subjects after that are fungible. Like, it's nothing. It's just, it's a way to sit you down and get you to read things and just think a little bit. But the challenge is actually getting people to do that or want to do that.
So when we have kids, we're just going to have to accept who they are.
Yeah.
I'm forcing our kids to read.
Nudging. Yeah.
And to do stuff.
Yeah, they have to. They have to do things
activities.
For us.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna stay tuned on this topic, because again, I cannot wait to see where it ends up. And so as a lawyer, you can tell me, what is the process now?
I don't know. Not that kind of lawyer.
He's not that kind of lawyer. I know, but
we could Google it, and someone has written a great op-ed.
That's
true. I can
true.
tell you.
That's true. I'm just curious what the process is like. What's the next step? Like,
I would expect a Martha Stewart type thing.
You think?
I mean, that's
Didn't
like
she
securities
do like 6
fraud
months or something.
Yeah, in like whatever kind of resort town.
That's funny. It wasn't even jail.
It was something
It was a
like
spot.
that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's funny. So yeah, we're gonna stay up to date on this, and we can continue to talk about this and tell us your thoughts on this topic on our social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at We Need to Talk the Podcast or _ We Need to Talk _. Now, we're gonna move on to the next thing that I want to talk about this week. My heart was very heavy with the situation a few days ago in New Zealand with a mass shooter. There were 50 casualties at 2 different mosques in Christchurch. It's Christchurch, correct?
Yeah.
Christchurch, New Zealand. And he was a white supremacist. And he cited quite a few American extremists, including our current president, as his inspiration and what he was inspired by. And this is a serious situation. This is a very serious situation because I don't think that people realize, well, there are certain people that do realize, but definitely not the ones that are influencing this type of behavior. They don't realize that their rhetoric and the choices that they're making aren't just influencing bad decisions in this country. Now it is becoming an international problem. And it's sad to me that people are now looking at America as a place that they don't want to be like. And I don't know when this is going to end with the gun thing. Like there's this gun obsession.
Well, in New Zealand,
tying it to white supremacy is just like a world of problem. But what were we going to say about New Zealand?
Well, the gun thing is being addressed in New Zealand, right?
Right. So you have one mass shooting in New Zealand, and they're already talking about changing their gun laws. And we have had how many mass shootings in America, and nothing's ever going to change. But the thing that, and we're going to get into gun control, obviously, here, but and white supremacy. But the thing with gun control in America, for me, that I don't think people understand is that gun control does not mean banning all guns. And I don't know why that's what they hear when they hear the phrase gun control.
Right. No, I think any give in their world is tantamount to losing the next thing. Mm-hmm. So they hold the line so strongly.
Right.
There was the bump stock legislation to ban those, and I think that they were okay with that, and by they I mean the gun lobby, and otherwise gun-toting people, because that's it's like modification of the actual weapon after the fact, to increase its just kill power, right? I don't know why that's so different from an assault rifle that you can easily just purchase, because they both achieve the same end.
Right.
But I don't know. It's I don't know. I
just don't know what the need for a common civilian to have an assault rifle is.
Yeah,
why?
This particular issue. I don't know. I don't want to cut things short, but we can debate this ad nauseum, and it has been, because when you bump up against something that there's just reason, from a reasonable standpoint, that doesn't make sense, right? It made sense at a time that is not today. It was baked into our Constitution at a time when things, mattered, right? But there weren't readily available assault rifles at, a gun show, for instance. And there weren't these kind of, I don't know. I feel that what's more interesting to me about the New Zealand situation is that, like you said, these ideas propagate and they spread across countries. Yeah. That's halfway around the world. Something like that, when we're looking at, today versus when you thought that it was the founders thought that it was a foundational thing that we needed to have in the Constitution.
Right.
Stuff like that doesn't happen. You get people. You can. I don't want to say radicalize, but you can turn someone's views on something by a series of just persuasive YouTube videos.
100%.
That, and it's like when you make something.
Sorry, not to cut you off, but that's interesting that you say that, because even some of the people that he quoted, that he was inspired by, were YouTubers that have this kind of toxic culture about them from the videos that they do. So that's a very good point that you're making.
Yeah. So that's when you have these things, when people are inherently susceptible to I don't know, shiny things,
No,
and
yeah.
more magnetic personalities or the loudest voices in the room, and you can easily obtain, in America at least, a weapon that can just mow down people. Something like that. This is the reasonable thing. There's no countervailing consideration that's compelling enough that would reverse course.
Right.
That would make sense to I guess to hold the line and say that these are here for this reason, and this, we need to stand, and need to protect my whatever, fill it in.
Yeah.
XYZ, family, house, McDonald's.
Which is very interesting to me that they go immediately, well, I need a gun to protect my family, da, 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 da. When, and I was talking about this earlier with a few friends, I feel like the majority of people that have guns or own guns in that magnitude aren't really people that I would see being robbed. Like,
I know.
You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
It's usually these people
But
that live in these
know.
backwoods. I'm like, nobody's coming to your
Yeah.
house. Nobody's
They
bothering
smell that
you.
gator meat from
Like,
a mile off.
Nobody wants, right? But like nobody wants anything that you have. So it's very interesting.
But they do.
Well, but not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't see like. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. I don't live in Beverly Hills with huge mansions or in Malibu
Right.
or whatever. But I don't really see somebody in a huge Malibu mansion having like 10 AK-47s. Like
Right.
it's just not.
It doesn't. Right.
The two don't go together.
Yeah.
But I'm curious your thoughts. Why do you think that white supremacy is always linked with mass shootings? For the most part, recently at least.
I actually I listened to something today, and I'm not going to take credit for it.
Okay.
That was it was a professor, a historian, who basically who had mentioned that the last time that white supremacists we saw like a kind of a resurgence, or taking arms essentially.
Right.
Something like this motivated attack in New Zealand was in I think the second term of Reagan, because I saw in Reagan a platform that he advocated and got elected on that kind of dovetailed a little bit with some of the things that they wanted. But then he never quite made, he never quite fulfilled that.
Yeah.
And they saw, according to this historian, they saw it like, well, you know what? We can't rely on the electoral process for this. We need to, take these things into our own hands and affect change. Maybe that's something similar with the Donald Trump stuff, even though he's obviously parroted a rhetoric that's not exactly peaceful.
It's toxic.
Right, but I mean, so maybe instead of wow, we can't get this through electing Trump, maybe it's we're doing what I think this guy is hinting at, but can't really do himself.
Right.
I don't know.
That's interesting. That's interesting because I feel like you're right that they think that, but it's like you said, his rhetoric. He's been perpetuating this, so people that aren't quite bright are going to think that that's what he's saying. It could be very well what he's saying. I don't really know because half the time I don't know what he's saying anyway. But
I think he says so many things that some people just pick up on a few and are like, "Yeah, this is great."
No,
right.
They put together their own narrative because he's not talking in complete sentences, and yeah.
And I think, in general, he's just gonna take the compliment. I feel like his ego is such that.
I influence this?
Yeah, or no, not necessarily that, but like, hey, I like if a really right leaning or extremist came up to him and like, oh, hey, I just want to let you know you're so you're so inspirational. Everything that you've said, and say something, insert a blank of something that's kind of cringeworthy. I feel like Donald Trump wouldn't correct that. You know what I mean?
Well, he barely disavowed when those Nazis were marching. So of course
Fine people.
Yeah, he called them fine people.
Right.
So that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. I don't know.
It's concerning, and I yeah, I'm we're like dumbfounded now thinking about Trump.
Well, like if I distill his what I think of the essence of that guy is, if there's like a if he filters new information through like a prism, like some people would be like, hey, well, what motivates the health of our country, my family, God, something. I feel like it's just filtered through Donald.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like I don't.
Well, that's a funny thing, because I was saying earlier to somebody also that, like, I really don't even think he actually thinks there's an immigration problem. I really just think he wants that wall as a monument to himself, in a way.
Oh, that's not. Yeah, that's not. That's what I have assumed this
Since the
entire
beginning.
time. Yeah, no, that's not. No,
It's like, if he can't have his face on Mount Rushmore, then he's gonna have a wall that says Trump
that's
on it.
honestly, that's just the platform of what got him elected, which is, I mean, he used like carnage. He referenced American like carnage in his inaugural address. Like that's the fear mongering works incredibly well for people in the wanting to be elected or talking to that base.
Yeah, I'm just really curious what goes on in his mind on a day-to-day basis.
I don't think you want to know.
I do, actually. I'm curious, because when he was running, but this is even before primaries, like if we were thinking of this as like the cast of Scandal, I loved his character. It was entertaining. He shook things up a little bit, but then when he actually became the candidate, you're like, this isn't funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you think about some of the things he said, I thought he was hilarious, because I was like, this can't be real. This can't be real. And now it's real, and you're like, I don't like this anymore. I want the season finale.
I don't know, it's like starting a brush fire or something in your enemy's territory, and then the winds change.
Right.
And you see it come back, and it's getting kind of closer.
I love that.
Getting kind of warm.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. So the last thing I want to talk about before we go, Can
we talk about these headphones? They don't quite fit over my ears.
Oh, it sounds like a personal problem.
I know. My ears are too big.
Oh, it's okay, but you look adorable.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So I cannot keep up with how many Democrats are running for president.
Yeah. Well, why wouldn't you?
There's like 25.
I'm running for president.
You probably
I'm using this guest spot on this podcast to announce my candidacy.
I'm going to be an amazing first lady, you guys. But seriously, I don't know how many people are running. I'm excited to dive into this a little bit more next week. When Karmel is back, we're going to also have special guest, my dear friend Drexel Hurd, who is a Democratic political strategist. Aficionado. And we're going to be talking about upcoming elections and a couple of other things that are going on. Did I say strategist?
Yeah.
We'll
fix it in post.
I'll fix it in post. Well, y'all know what I meant. Anyways, So, I'm just curious your thoughts on that. And if because I personally am afraid that Democrats are going to screw it up because there's so many of them running, and Donald Trump's going to get reelected, which I don't even want to say that because it makes me sick to my stomach to think that way. And I'm excited to talk to Drexel about this next week, but I'm concerned.
What would screw it up in your mind?
That they're not going to back.
I mean, aside from losing.
Besides that they're not going to back the obvious right candidate to beat Trump.
But do we know who that is?
Not yet. Okay. No, not yet at all.
You think it's going to be like a Hillary situation?
I'm worried it's going to be another Hillary situation, because I get why people weren't ready to go with Bernie, because he's not really a Democrat, but I truly believe that Bernie would have beat Trump.
I think, honestly, I think that it would have been... Yeah.
Even though technically Hillary did beat Trump, but that's another conversation.
If we'll see how much I'm going to eat these words, but I think in today's day and age, Bernie Sanders is not going to be radical enough. I think that the most vocal people will want a candidate that swings much like very far to the left.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I think in the iterations of the presidencies, like Obama, whether or not he was, like not just centrist, but like far to the left, he's perceived, especially among, right-leaning folks, as being very far to the left. And then the pendulum swung in the other way to someone who's, incredibly nationalistic and, to the far right. I don't think we settle on someone who's centrist. I don't. I think that the Democratic candidates will take positions that are increasingly to the left, and that'll make things interesting. I think it'll make things really interesting.
So, of the people that you know that are running so far, who do you think has the strongest chance?
I don't know. I have no idea, and honestly, the other thing is I don't like politics. I don't follow this stuff.
I know you don't.
I follow it enough to just be apprised of the facts, and that's it. So I don't know. I have no idea. And also Trump threw out, any kind of logic of any kind of prediction.
What do you think people actually thought that he was going to bring to the country? And what do you think that they still think that he is bringing to the country? Because we've obviously seen there has been a shift in support for him, but there's still that small percentage that still is going to ride or die. Is it stubbornness, or do you think it's actually that they believe that he is doing good for this country?
Both. I do. I think the president is incredibly media savvy, and I think he won the contest of first impressions initially for a lot of folks. And what he said about shooting someone on in New York and getting away with it, I think like that's obviously extreme, but there's something to that where I don't know what he would have to do to get people to adjust their prior assumptions. I think for a lot of people, they look to him like kind of a gold standard or something. The brand of Trump has instilled itself favorably in their minds, and I don't know if he can do wrong in their eyes. It's like, I don't know, like you have, some friend who just kind of sucks or whatever. And then you think about it, you're like, no, but they're Stephanie's a great friend. She's, she's like, then you think about it, you're like, well, why do I think Stephanie's a great friend? It's like, oh, because when I met her, she was really nice and said I look pretty. Yeah. It's like, but what about since then? She does all these awful things. And she flakes out and she like tried to steal your boyfriend. It's like, wait a second. But like, you're looking through those rose-colored, glasses for so long. Yeah. And so for Trump,
same thing.
Yeah, it's kind of,
I get it.
And honestly, like he's such a strong, brash personality, that I don't even know what that lends itself to. It's just like it's something to get behind. Yeah.
Well, I personally think it's clearly the wrong thing to get behind.
Yeah.
But I get you. So before we end the show today, as I mentioned last week in our first episode, every week we are going to put a spotlight on a community, a person, or organization that is doing good in the world. So I'm going to give a shout out to my own personal faith community, Harmony Toluca Lake. It is a very progressive and loving and affirming faith community in Los Angeles. If that is what you are looking for, I have the honor and privilege of being the worship leader at this community. And it is filled with people that are trying to do good in the world and letting everyone know that God loves you no matter what. So if you are looking for a community to join, please consider coming and visiting Harmony Toluca Lake Sundays at 10:30 a.m. Shameless plug, but it's for a good cause. So thank you so much to my wonderful husband, John, for joining me this week.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And we'll be back next week with Karmel and my good friend Drexel. And make sure you contact us on all social media. Again, Facebook and Instagram at We Need to Talk the Podcast, and Twitter at _We Need to Talk_. Talk to you soon. Bye.